In this tutorial with Inkscape, I'm going to show you how you can replace an existing image in your composition, use it as a proxy image. This happens to me every once in a while. I'll start a composition and I'll think, I think I've got a better image that I want to use for this. Could be a single image, could be multiple images, but I've got a way that you can replace these images, use an existing image as a proxy, so you can replace it with a new image, which is a huge time saver. All right, before we get started with this tutorial, there'll be a link to the playlist for Inkscape in the show notes, which contains all of the tutorials that I've created so far for Inkscape, and that playlist will contain all future tutorials that I publish of Inkscape. And there's a whole list of playlists in the show notes for GIMP and for the Technology Learning Lab, for RC Tech, for all the different playlists that I've put together for different videos. So, all right, so in this tutorial, I've got an autumn background here with the rolling hills with a pumpkin patch. I put a scarecrow in my composition, and he's sitting over here on this hill over here, and I've got a drop shadow behind him to give a little bit of depth to make him come off the screen a little bit, and I've got a perspective shadow in front of him. Okay, so in the last tutorial that I published for Inkscape, I went over how to make these more versatile, better looking shadows in Inkscape rather than just using the built-in filter. So that will be in the playlist as well. All right, so let's bring up our layer here, and I'm going to name I'm going to name, let me block that one out. I'm going to name my components here so it's easier to tell what you've got selected. Okay, so that's my scarecrow. Oh, okay, and this is my scarecrow perspective shadow, and that's my drop shadow. So I'm going to bring my drop shadow up one level. Crow, drop shadow. All right, I'm going to copy that text. And right here is my perspective shadow. Okay, this naming your components in your composition makes it a lot easier to select what you need, especially when they're stacked over one another. It just gets kind of confusing if you don't have them named. Okay, and then right here I've got my pumpkin patch. We'll name that one too. Okay, so let's say that I've got my scarecrow in my composition. I like the way it looks, but I really would rather have used the Pumpkin King image rather than the scarecrow in this composition. All right, so what you can do is if you look up here in this tab, it's Object Attributes. If that tab is not open, then you can always right click and select Object Attributes, okay? So what we're going to select what we want to replace. What we're going to use our scarecrow as our proxy image, and then we're going to go over here this tab to Object Attributes, and as you can see, it's got the URL here, the file that I'm using for this particular composition, the scarecrow. So what I can do is select this folder image here, and I can go into my folder that has my composition for Inkscape and Substitution with filters, and then I'm going to look for my Pumpkin King. There's my Pumpkin King image. So when I select OK, check that out. It scales it, it positions it right where I had my scarecrow. This is where it comes in really handy, using an existing image in your composition as a proxy to replace that image with. Okay, so now we have the drop shadow behind it, and luckily we've already named everything, so we know exactly what to select, right? So we've got the scarecrow drop shadow. So what I'm going to do is go into Object attributes again. And as you can see, my drop shadow has a URL or a file name. I'm going to select the folder again, and I'm going to select the exact same image file, the scarecrow. Oops. Pumpkin King. I selected the wrong image. Pumpkin King. Okay, so I select Pumpkin King, and now all of a sudden, if I move the pumpkin out of the way, you see, it took my filter, it accepted the new image and applied the exact same filter to the replacement image. Now, how much of a time saver is that, right? Okay, so the only thing I've got to do now is, because the scarecrow was up on that wood post above the ground, what I want to do is I'm going to go back over to my layers here. I'm going to select the scarecrow, and I'm going to hold the shift down. I'm going to select the drop shadow as well, and then I'm going to move him down to ground level here. All right, he needs to be standing on the ground instead of on a post above it like the scarecrow was. So I've got him there. All right, so now I've got that down. I can go to my scarecrow perspective shadow that I created, and I can go back into object attributes. Same thing. It's showing the file name that I have selected for it now. I'm going to select my folder. I'm going to go back in and select the exact same image again. Pumpkin King. Select OK, and then lo and behold, it takes the new image. It keeps everything that I've done for creating this perspective shadow with the original image, and lo and behold, it converts it into a perspective shadow of the Pumpkin King now instead of the scarecrow. So I was able to do all that, and of course, if I wasn't explaining it while I was doing it, I would be able to do it much, much faster. But the thing is, that is such a time saver, right? I didn't have to take my original image and scale it and place it back where the scarecrow was. Using it as a proxy image did that for me. I didn't have to copy that image and then create a drop shadow of it and place that where I needed it. That was already done too. I didn't have to make another copy of the image and create my perspective shadow, because it did that as well. So the only thing that I had to do, because the images, because one image was slightly above the ground and another image was slightly below, was I had to drop the Pumpkin King down to the ground level, whereas the scarecrow was up on that post. So that was the only thing that I had to do to modify the composition that I had with a completely different image with drop shadow and perspective shadow. That is a huge time saver. Now, this only works with digital images, like JPEG and PNG and BMP and WebP. It doesn't work with embedded or linked SVG files. It only works with digital images, so I want to make you aware of that. But I almost always have digital images in part of my composition, even the ones I put together in Inkscape. The only thing in this composition that really is a vector image, other than the file itself, is my logo up here, is a vector graphic, and the background and the Pumpkin King image that I have here are actually digital images. They're not vector files. So, but it works great. It works great for laying out, using Inkscape as your graphic compositor, not just an Illustrator. And it's also a fantastic application for desktop publishing as well. So I use Inkscape almost on a daily basis. But so there's another bit of information for you guys, a tip and a process that I use, because sometimes you need to change the image of one or two or more images in your composition, and that is a quick and easy way to be able to do it. All right, so that's a wrap on this episode. Don't forget, I've got links to all those playlists in the show notes, including, and I think you guys really want to look at the previous tutorial I published in Inkscape, which shows you my method for creating these shadows. And it really is a very easy method for creating drop shadows and perspective shadows, and that's much more versatile than just using the built-in filter on an image. So look for that. All right, so thanks for watching, and I'll see you next time in the Tinkerz Lab.